Okay, so we're going to be learning about the map of the United States. I just want to recap what it is that we remember and what it is that we don't remember from our previous lessons. So here we have the map of the United States. It's vitally important that we remember the states themselves, the nature of the state, the history of the state, although we will not be going over that material. And just a general understanding of their establishment. So we'll start from the west towards the east, just because the west has larger territories or larger states. And once you start getting to the east, you have all of these tiny little states that we have to memorize for the test. So let's begin. The first big state that we have is Alaska. Alaska is the biggest state in the United States. Alaska can almost connect to Russia, and you can actually see Russia from Alaska. They're very close to each other. There's a very funny joke that I like where during the Cold War, Russia and the United States were so opposed and threatening nuclear war, but yet it's seemingly so far away from one another on the East Coast, but yet Alaska's right there, so it's like two barking dogs with a gate between it, and then when you remember that Alaska exists, it's almost like they lift the gate and they just say go at it, and then they just stop. Anyways, the next state we're going to capture or cover is Hawaii. Hawaii is a Polynesian state. It's closer to the Philippines, it's closer to the many islands that Japan used to conquer, but now we have Hawaii. The next state we're going to cover is, don't mind my assistant Gertrude. My assistant Gertrude is in training right now. She's losing it for the moment. This is California, the gold rush state. California, throughout all of American history, has always held lots of promises for whoever might migrate there. It's a very well sought after state, except for right now where you see a lot more people running away from it than to it. One could blame it on the many laws that have been passed ever since Ronald Reagan's end of his presidency. The next state we're going to cover is, I say Oregon, but it's Oregon. Oregon is in the Pacific Northwest along with Washington. The weather here is very rainy, but very gorgeous. Although in Oregon it's not so rainy, but Washington is definitely rainy, but very gorgeous. Oregon is where, Kurt Cobain was born in Washington. Oregon is where the show Portlandia is from. That'll give you kind of a good idea of what Oregon is about. Except now it's 10 times worse, because it's like Portlandia meets that one zombie show. This Is Us, the one where they turn into mushrooms. That's Oregon now. It's like zombie mushroom aging hipsters that inhabit Oregon. Now we have who complain about the policies that they enact within their own state, and then with their currency they go off and destroy other parts because they're zombies. The next state we're going to cover is Washington. This is the Twilight State. This is the Kurt Cobain state. Now, Washington is a very rainy area, and alongside with Oregon, there's a lot of volcanoes also located in both areas. Olympia has Mount Olympus, I think it's called, and that's a volcano. It's kind of active. It's not really active though. The last time it fired off, I think, was like in the 80s, I think, but yeah, it didn't do too much damage. The next state we're going to cover is Nevada. Nevada is fascinating. This entire little southwestern territory is very interesting. If you've ever played The Sims 2, if you remember the desert world where there's aliens and all of these different things that you can now find among the sand, it's very similar. It's always like in sand regions. You just never know what you're going to find. It's always supernatural. Las Vegas, or rather Nevada, is also the state of Las Vegas, which is a very fun amusement park for adults, as long as you don't get too caught up on the little games, you could say. You could have a fun time, otherwise you're going to literally lose all of your money. Much like in carnivals, when you spend too much time giving money to the carnival games, you just lose all your money on rigged games. The next state we're going to be covering is Arizona. Arizona is also part of the Southwestern Territory. Arizona is also the state, I believe, of alien abductions. Now that's fascinating. Utah is the state of Mormons. Utah is also very interesting, particularly in the Great Salt Lake area. But I wonder what makes a lake salty. You insult it. That was a better joke than I thought it was. Now, the Mormons do inhabit Utah pretty much. If someone lives in Utah, you can pretty much have an 80% chance of guessing correctly that they're Mormon. Now, the next state we're going to cover is Idaho. I think Idaho is like the potato capital or something. Yeah, Idaho, potatoes. Next to Idaho, we have Montana. Montana is a very cold state, very large state. It's judging Idaho, but it's also on the Canadian border. Very interesting state. All I think about when I think of Montana are horses. Underneath Montana, we have Wyoming. Wyoming is another sort of in the middle type of state. I have yet to learn too many details about Wyoming, but it is where Yellowstone National Park is, so that's cool. The next state we have is Colorado. Colorado is the state of South Park. It is the state of Denver and Bangor, and it's a very beautiful state where you can find some south or southern warm activities, but you can also find the snowy hills for skiing. Down here we have New Mexico. Not Mexico, New Mexico. New Mexico is also kind of like Arizona. There's a lot of like alien abductions and spooky cryptid stuff that happens in New Mexico. Next to New Mexico, we have the grand old state of Texas, which is currently being destroyed by people who live in California. Texas was known for being it could almost accede into its own country if it wants to, but the logistics of it is too complicated to achieve. This state has pretty much everything. You have coastal cities like Houston, you have more sort of like vibrant cities like San Antonio, you have hill-centered cities like Austin, and you have more deserted areas like Dallas, but it still has some forest areas. Towards the New Mexico territories is where you start to see more of the desert area. Towards the coast is when you start to see more coastal areas. Towards the north is where you start to see more, I guess, hill-sided areas. Now, the next state we're going to cover is Oklahoma. Oklahoma is pretty much a time capsule, I guess. Its lack of attraction has basically kept it the same throughout all of the changes that the other states have endured in time. The next state we're going to capture is Kansas, most importantly, Topeka. That was Blue's favorite city. Kansas is where Dorothy is not anymore, for she is no longer in Kansas. She has passed away. Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska. Nebraska is an interesting state, but not really. South Dakota is where Mount Rushmore is. South Dakota is southern to North Dakota, where Mount Rushmore is not. Minnesota is where the Twin Cities basically tanked that of St. Paul and Minneapolis. They were gorgeous cities. They were very safe, very well maintained, stunning cities. But then for some reason, in the past 4 years, they've become hellholes on Earth. Lots of violent crime. You can expect to be perhaps a victim of crime in those beautiful Twin Cities that were stolen from the citizens of those cities. The next state we have is Iowa. Iowa is a corn state. Kansas, or rather Missouri, is also a state of Kansas City, which is interesting because it has an old section of Kansas City that used to belong to Ernest Hemingway when he visited, which is quite interesting to me. Plus it has the Ozarks. Arkansas is like Arkansas. That's where Bill Clinton is from. Louisiana is where New Orleans also is. New Orleans has a lot of potential. It's just that there's a lot of characters that ruin New Orleans. But it has a vibrant culture down there. Very beautiful history, I would say. Just very gorgeous architecture. Mississippi, Mississippi. That one is a very beautiful state too. Honestly, all of the South is a very beautiful region. It's all very classic and beautiful and generally well maintained. It's just age can sometimes ravish anything. The next state is Tennessee. Nashville, Tennessee. That's where I believe all of the country singers come from, is the Nashville area. That's where you start to see kind of like the mecca of country stars. Above that is Illinois. Illinois is where Chicago is, yet another city that is, it has a lot of beautiful potential to it. It can keep itself very well clean, unlike New York, where it's almost difficult to keep it clean. It's just that there's a lot of characters that ruin Chicago. Above Chicago is Wisconsin. Wisconsin is the state of cheese. Wisconsin is just generally lovely. There's just a lot of farm area in Wisconsin. We're gonna go over the little bend into Michigan, another farm state, very gorgeous as well. And downwards, we're gonna go down to Indiana. Indiana is a nice, peaceful state, depending on which city you visit. If it's Indianapolis or Gary, not so much. Going down to Kentucky, we have just the state, I believe, of bluegrass, I think is what Kentucky is known for. We've already covered Tennessee. Now we're going to go down to Alabama. That's where Forrest Gump is from. And we're going to cross over to Georgia, the state of peaches, I believe. Georgia's also very gorgeous, has a lot of potential. We're going down to Florida. Florida is the state of oranges and Disney World and Universal Studios. It has a lot of cool amusement parks and hurricanes. There's a lot of hurricanes that go through Florida, unfortunately. We go up to South Carolina. South Carolina is also very lovely. It has a lot of southern charm to it, but it has more temperate weather. Now we're going to go up to North Carolina. That's where a lot of New Yorkians are going down to, is North Carolina, destroying the state naturally. North Carolina is also very affordable, very beautiful, very modest town for now. Then it'll have the same fate as Texas, where the prices make and Florida, where the prices make absolutely no sense. No one can understand why it is that the property that used to cost 65 grand now costs 650 grand, and all the locals get pushed out, and then the policies are replaced with the same ones that destroyed the states that those same parasitic zombies visited from or came from. Now, we're going to go into Virginia. That's where the capital of the country is. Or rather, Washington, D.C. is its own little, territory, its own little region. But Virginia is where the birth rock, really, of a lot of American history came from. Virginia is where we settled, or where they settled. Virginia is where everything kind of birthed from. Next to Virginia, we have West Virginia. Also a beautiful state. I like a song that goes, West Virginia, born home and country, be the place where I belong. West Virginia is very beautiful. It's part of the Rust Belt, and unfortunately this entire area, including Ohio, was kind of decimated when a lot of the industries, a lot of the manufacturing jobs were basically exported to other countries who now benefit from the labor that could be used by Americans still struggling in this region. Next to West Virginia, we have, we didn't cover Ohio. Ohio is also a really nice state. It has the view of the lake, and it has a lot of manufacturing businesses that could come back. The big kicker about why a lot of these states are not the greatest is because the manufacturing jobs have left, thus leaving the citizens impoverished, and oftentimes when there's poverty, then you start to see a degrading of the buildings. Also, another factor is that there's a lot of a lot of influences that also destroy the inner cities. Now, And also the suburban and rural cities. How does this even happen? Now, we're going to move on to Maryland. Maryland is also another kind of birthplace of American history. There's a lot of American history that happened in Maryland. Next to Maryland, we have Delaware. Delaware is right there. It's kind of like a little triangle next to Maryland. Maryland is kind of like a little water gun, and then Delaware is like a little triangle. And then above these two states, we have Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is another state that's very big in American history. Then we have, that's where we have the Pennsylvania Bell, the Penn Bell. I think that's what it's called, I think. Then we have New Jersey, and then above New Jersey, we have New York. And then next to New York, we have Connecticut, another New England important town to American history. Very vital. I think that's where Harvard is in Connecticut, I think. And then we have Rhode Island, a very cute, beautiful town, or state. I think it has a lot of potential. I think Rhode Island is also where H.P. Lovecraft is from. He was from Providence. And then we have Massachusetts, another big New England state. And then above Massachusetts, we have Vermont and New Hampshire, the sister states. They have completely opposing legislature. New Hampshire is more Republican, Vermont is more Democratic. Vermont is where Bernie Sanders is from. And then above New Hampshire, we have Maine, which is also a lovely state. And that covers all of the United States states. So I hope you kind of keep this in mind and you memorize it or practice it on your own. That's going to ensure that you're going to do well in this test. Okay? Great. In that case, take care.